there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Today, we're continuing where we left off. We're doing chapter 6. We're still in book 1, the first book, the introduction in that sense, the introduction to the theme, and looking at chapter 6 today. So let's go right into it. As for the universal good, okay, now this is the problem. 29 is general good, or kathalou, here referring to the Platonic idea of the good as the self-subsisting whole from any particular good thing. The word order in Greek suggests at first blush that the subject of the chapter will be universal better to the universal better to dikalathu belaton. And indeed, Aristotle will argue that our experience of better and worse does not permit us to access universal good. So therefore, we start up the greater good, the greatest good, universal good, the good. Um, uh, um, uh, as for the good in the Aristotelian sense, and this is the famous Platonic sense, Aristotle's kind of critiquing Plato here. This is what this is, right? Perhaps it is better to examine it and go through the perplexities involved in the way it is spoken of. Although undertaking such inquiries is arduous, because the men who introduced the forms, the eidos, are dear. In other words, friends, right? Our friends, the eidos, the ida, singular eidos, a term regularly with Plato and the Platonists, like the idea, right? The idea eidos in that sense. The term that will shortly follow. The primary sense of eidos is that which is seen, in particular the form or the shape of a thing. In the Platonic doctrine of forms, to which Aristotle refers here, the Ida are self-subsisting forms that give each particular thing its class character, and hence are, in some sense, responsible for the existence of a thing as what it is. So the Eidos and the Platonics, again, Aristotle here is critiquing Plato. Okay, and that is that because the people who brought the idea of the good, or the eidos, who talk about the eidos of a thing are dear friends in that sense, are dear to him in that sense, right? And because again, it's because he's going to be saying, listen, Plato talked about the good. The good as the form. This is right in the Republic. This is the whole idea. The idea of the good, right? That is going to be the ideal point. And he's going to say, in chapter 6, he's going to take it on. Okay, but perhaps it might be held to be. Okay, but perhaps it might be better to be held. Sorry, it might be. Sorry. But perhaps it might be held to be better. Sorry, this is my version. Not better to be held, but might be held to be better. And in fact, to become obligatory, at least for the sake of preserving the truth. To do away with even one owns things, especially for those who are philosophers. In other words, he's saying that what's going on here is he's going to basically say that the truth matters more here. Right? The truth is going to matter more here. And I'm going to address this question here. Okay, we got a problem here. Hold on. Okay. 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 So again, it might be better, held to be better, and in fact be obligatory, right? For the sake of preserving the truth, to do away with one's own things, right? Especially for those who are philosophers in a sense. For although both are dear, it is a pious thing to honor the truth first. In other words, I love Plato, but Plato's a friend. I love him, but I love truth more, right? That's that line here, right? Um, Now, those who convey this opinion did not make ideas, eidos, pertain to those cases in which they spoke of the prior and the posterior. Hence, they did not set up an idea of numbers either, the idea of the eidos of numbers either. So, in other words, in other words, here Aristotle is saying, listen, things like things that have spoke of the prior and the posterior, thing that come through. This doesn't have an idea of this thing, and the question of numbers too. This is interesting because is there an idea of numbers? Idea of numbers, but the good is spoken of in relation to what something is, and in relation to what sort of thing it is, and as regards its relations to something. Okay? In other words, notice that the problem here is that when we speak of the good, it's always the good is kind of, he says, it's in relation to some sort of thing, and it's regards a relation to something. But that which is the thing itself, but that which it is the thing itself, that is the being, is prior by nature to any relation it has. For this is like an offshoot of an accident of its being. Right. This is this point. In other words, even though it is the good is something in relation to something, it's the very nature of the thing is something that is in other words, but that which it is the thing itself, that is prior to its nature has any relation. So the thing itself is the good is before its relations, right? He's saying. As a result, there would not be any common ideas pertaining to these things. He's saying now, because of this, because it's a thing to itself and there's no relation, as a result, there would not be any common eidos pertaining to these things. And further, the good is spoken of in as many ways as is the term is. For the good is spoken of in relation to what something is. For example, the God or intellect, nous, right? This is 33 nous. Um, in fact, I need to stop here for a second. We have to go back to eidos here for a second. The eidos here is note 32. He says the translation of the term made famous by this is form, right? It is related to the verb to see, right? To see, this is what he's saying. It means most simply the outward look or appearance of a thing, and by extension, a class to which it belongs, right? That's now back to where it is saying here at this point. That is the intellect, for example, the God or the intellect, right? This is 33. Again, this is the first appearance of the word theos, God, and the term nous, translated throughout as intellect, right? Now, there's exceptions, he's saying, where he translates that sense, right? He says there's one, two, three, nous' sense. But let's continue here, what he's saying here. He's saying a relation to what something is, for example, the God and the intellect. So the God, this is something, what something is, the God or intellect, is that sense, right? Good. As for what sort of thing something is, the good is spoken of as the virtues, right? So he's saying that yes, it's in one sense what it is, right? The God or the intellect, right? And then second of all, what sort of thing it is. The good is spoken of as the virtues, right? As for how much something is, it is spoken of as the measured amount, in relation to something as what is useful, right? As regard to time, the opportune moment, as regard to place, as the right location, and other sorts of things. So there's criteria. So remember, this is interesting. Remember, this is something of is, then um, it is what it is, right? And then two, sort, what sort of thing, how much, the in its relation, what is it related to, right? in regards to time and in regards to place, right? Those are criteria. Since all of this is so, it is clear that the good would not be something common, universal, or one because of the various aspects of this, right? These criterias, because of the different ways it's spoken of, these one, two, at least five, when I say one, two, three, four ways. And, and then the other things that it would not be something universal in one. For if that were the case, it would not be spoken of in all these categories, but in one alone. So therefore, he's suggesting again. This is a trick. Now, Aristotle's kind of done something. Listen, saying it's not one. It's not just one thing. The good. It's not spoken of one form. It's at least four different ways it's spoken of. Five, in fact, there's others. Apparently says that and other sort of things, right? And then if so, it's clear that the good would not be something common, shared, completely shared. It's not something universal or in one, common, universal, or one, right? For if that were the case, it would not be spoken of in all the categories, but only one alone. And further, since there is a single science of things, episteme. Now, this is the problem of science here. I think is episteme, or knowledge of things, science of things that pertains to the single idea. There would be some single science of all good things. Since there is a single science that pertains to the single idea, there would also be some single science of all good things. In other words, given if it was this one thing, the good is one, the good is the thing. But as things stand, there are many sciences, even of things that fall under a single category. For example, the opportune moment, right? The question of what is the opportune moment? This is a category, right? In war, it is generalship. In illness, medicine. And in the case of measured amount of nourishment, on the one hand, it's medicine, but in that of physical exertion, on the other, it's gymnastic training. So therefore, even this interesting here. What does he say here? Let's talk about this for a second. Let's go look at here. This trip. He says, for example, the opportune moment in what are the four signs of a single category? Like, for example, the opportune moment, right? What is the opportune moment? That's weird term moment. The right thing, the right action, right? For in war, it's generalship, the right action in that sense, or the right thing. In illness, medicine is the thing that cures it, right? In case of measured amount of nourishment, on one hand it's medicine, and the other one it's regarding to physical exertions, it is for gymnastic training. But someone might be perplexed as to whether they mean as to whatever they mean by thing as such, the thing as such. This is it. If in I think this is energy. I think thing. A thing as such. If in fact the very same action, what they mean by the thing as such, if in fact the very same account of human beings pertains both to human beings as such and a given human being. So this is what he's saying. It perplexes when you talk about the general thing and the particular. This is the particular and the general. How can you, perplex whether they think, but the thing as such, they mean by the thing as such, when they're trying to, it pertains, the same account of human being pertains both to the human being as such and to a given human being. For in the respect, in which each is a human being, so respect in the degree or the thing that each is a human being, they will not differ at all. So therefore, as human being, they share that in common, right? If this is so, then neither the good as such nor a good thing will differ. Right? This if it's only that they share in that sense, they share in common. Um, um, uh, 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 will differ in the respect to which each is good. Right? If this is so, right? Neither the good as such nor the good thing will differ in respect to which each thing is good. Moreover, the good will not be good to a greater degree by being eternal either. If in fact whiteness that lasts a long time will not be whiter than that which lasts only one day. So time, length of time, eternality, and that doesn't make it more so in that sense. He's saying that whiteness, the white idea, something that is white. This is whiter than that. Doesn't the fact that this is eternal and this is past, this will only be there for a minute or so. This is still whiter, right? But the Pyth- Pythagoreans, again, this is there's little known about Pythagoras, famous in the 6th century from Samos, but he and his followers became particularly well known for their mathematical investigation. But the Pythagoreans seem to speak more persuasively about it by positing the one in the columns of the good. And it is indeed they whom Sippatus seems to follow. Okay, Sippatus is the Athenian philosopher who succeeded Plato as the head of the academy in Athens. Though he was a prolific writer, only fragments of it. So therefore, Aristotle took speaking of it. But he follows that as indeed Sippatus who seems to follow this idea that the one, positing the one in the column of the goods, right? But about these things, let there be another argument. Okay, in other words, but regarding these things, let there be another argument. A certain dispute over the point stated begin to appear because the arguments made by the proponents of the forms, the eidos, do not concern every good. So therefore, he's saying that okay, first of all, I mean, a certain dispute arises because not all, because the arguments about the pronouncements about the forms do not concern every good. Things pursued and cherished by themselves are spoken of in reference to a single form. But what produces them, or in some way preserves them, or prevents their contraries, is spoken of as being good on account of the former sort of goods and in a different manner. So he's saying that there's two things: things that are, in other words, the things that are in themselves. This is how they're doing, but things that are for this that come because of something, right? Think, but uh, but what produces these good things is spoken of as being goods on account of the former sort of goods, and in a different manner. In other words, the things that create this, these are seem to be lesser than this, and they're understood in a different manner. It is clear then that the good things would be spoken of in two senses: those that are good in themselves, others that are good on account of these. So therefore, in other words, there are two types of goods. There's goods in themselves, and it's goods because they produced good on account of they are good because they produce this good. Others that are good on account of these things in that sense, right? Separating the things good in themselves from those that are advantageous. Then, so if they're separate, okay. Now all of a sudden he stops here at this line, new paragraph. And he says, "Now, okay, let's first do this. Let's separate the things good in themselves from those that are advantageous. Then let us examine whether the former are spoken of in reference to a single idea. In other words, we're going to distinguish between the good in themselves and the things that are advantageous, right? What does advantageous means? That there's things that are that something that are better for you, gives you advantage, gives you something more than you had, and that or gives some power, kind of gives you a little advantage in that sense, right? This is advantageous. Um, are these kind of things spoken of as a single idea? What sort of things might someone posit as being good in themselves? So so question: what kind of things are goods in themselves? Is it so many things as are in fact pursued for themselves alone? For example, exercising prudence and seeing, as well as certain pleasures and honors. In other words, his first question is how many of these goods as themselves? Is it many? Like such as, like he says, are these things pursued? In other words, his examples are exercising prudence and seeing, as well as certain pleasures and honors. For even if we pursue these on account of something else as well, nevertheless, one might posit them as being among things that are good in themselves. So, yes, you can have a good in itself, but it can also be something that you do to get something else, right? But they could be good in themselves as well. Or is there nothing good in itself except the idea? So is it that could it be both not only good in itself but good for something, or only thing that's really nothing good except for something that is in itself except the idea in that sense, right? This is the kind of question. See, he says, can it be that it can be both, that pursue something good in itself? Like, is there many? Are the goods many? Are the good things many? The things in themselves many? And it's something that we can something can be a good in itself, but also done for the sake of advantage, right? Or is nothing good except in itself except the form, right? The result will be that the form, the eidos, abstracted from all individual good things, is pointless. So that's his response. He says, no, it can't be, because the result will be that the form, abstracted from all individual good things, is pointless. But in fact, but if in fact these things, that is, exercising prudence, seeing, and the like, are among the things good in themselves, the of the good will need to definition of the good will need to manifest itself as the same in all cases, just as the definition of whiteness is the same in the case of snow, and in that of white lead, right? White of white lead, lead. But the definitions of honor, prudence, and pleasures are distinct and differ in every respect in which they are goods. So he says at one level that if they are goods in that one sense, that how they are should be uniform, like the question of whiteness. But he says, but definitions of honor, prudence, and pleasure are distinct and differ in every respect in which they are goods. And it is not the case, therefore, that the good is something common in reference to a single idea. In a sense, he's saying that question of honor, prudence, and pleasure, well, they're not. They differ from each other in respects to which they're goods, and because of this, the good is not something common in reference to a single form. In that sense, eidos. But how indeed are they spoken of as good? And how are they spoken of as good? His response to that after that next paragraph. For they are not like things that share the same name by chance. So that okay. First, how are they good? For one, they're not like things that share the same name by chance. In other words, these things like prudence, honor, pleasure, we call them good. It's not by chance, right? It is by dint of their stemming from one thing. Is it by the dint, or is it because? Is it, okay, dint, this is a funny word. Is it by the reason or the cause? Is it because of their stemming from one thing, or because they all contribute to one thing. So that is it because they come from one thing or they contribute? Do they, are they is it that is the thing that they're coming from, is would they come from it, or is it they contribute, all contribute to one thing? Or is it more that they are such by analogy? So is it because they come from it, or one thing, or they do that, or is it by they're common because of their, in other words, or is it more that they are such good by analogy? For there is sight in the body, for for as there is sight in the body, so there is intellect in the soul, nous in the soul. And indeed one thing in one thing, and another in another. So wait a minute. So okay. So there's one thing in one thing, and another in another. So there's eyesight in the body, but there is nous in soul, and nous is like seeing, but it's not seeing. Okay, but perhaps that's where therefore it's analogous. He gives the example of analogy here, right? But perhaps we ought to leave these considerations be for now. So maybe we should just let this question be. To be very precise about them would be more appropriate to another. Would be more appropriate to another philosophy. So in other words, if we're going to get more deep in here, it's a more precise about them. It would be more appropriate to another philosophy. The case is similar with the form eidos as well, with the eidos as well. Even if there is some one good thing that is predicated of things in common, or there is some separate thing itself by itself, it is clear that it would not be subject to action or be capable of being possessed by a human being. So in other words, what he's saying here, he's saying that okay, even if there was something, an idea that was shared, everything shares this, right, in common, or that it could be a good thing that is predicated of everything. In other words, that even if there is a form, the form idea, even if there's some one good thing that is predicated of things in common, or if there's some separate thing, itself by itself, right? This is not something that is capable of being is subject to action, or in other words, praxis. It's not the realm of praxis, or capable of being. So he says that it's not something that's capable of being possessed by a human being in that sense, but it is just some such thing that is now being sought. In other words, it's something that you can investigate, something to be understood. It can be understood, it can be that, but it's not something that is which is uh, uh, it is something that is subject to action or capable of being possessed by a human being. Perhaps someone might be of the opinion that it is better to be familiar with it, with a view to those goods that can be possessed and are subject to action. In other words, you might be okay. You might be better. In other words, some might argue that the opinion that it is better to be familiar with this concept, right? This idea of the good, a universal good in that sense, this absolute good, that it could, because with a view that it can be possessed and are subject to it. By having this universal good, this idea of universal good, the good as a sort of model, we will we will we will to a greater degree know also the things that are good for us. Okay, because we use this, we will have a better knowledge of what the good for us, and if we know them, we will hit on them. In other words, this is an interesting point. He's saying that okay, what by in other words, maybe it's better that we have this idea, even though it's not capable of action. It might be a good point that we can something we can a kind of a model that we can aim towards, right? And it's a metaphor of hitting it, right? Hitting it, the archery metaphor. It's a target that we can go towards, and we can try to achieve it, right? We will hit on them. Now, the argument has a certain persuasiveness, but it seems to be inconsistent with the sciences. So therefore, it's saying, okay, but this is an argument that you could do it. Oh, but seems to be inconsistent with the episteme sciences. For although all science aims at some good, we seek out what is lacking. We aim at good and seek out what is lacking. They pass over knowledge of the good. They pass over knowledge of the good itself. So therefore, in other words, we aim at some good and seek out what is lacking. They pass over knowledge of the good itself, and yet it is not reasonable for all craftsmen, all tech people engaged in technique, to be ignorant of so great an aid, and not to seek it out. In other words, it seems to be not reasonable for all craftsmen to be ignorant of so great an aid, and not to seek out this idea of this metaphor of the good thing. A further perplexity too is what benefit the weaver or the carpenter might gain in relation to his own art by knowing this same good, or how he who has contemplated the idea itself will be a more skilled physician or general. In other words, it's how will this affect you? Okay, yes, it might be interesting to know for some sense, the science in that sense, but what benefit will this give knowing this idea, eidos? How will it make you a better carpenter, a better weaver, or even how a better physician or a better general, right? For it appears that the physician does not examine even health in this way, but inquires rather into the health of a human being, and even more, perhaps, into that of this particular human being. So, therefore, the idea, okay, you do health. You're not cared about the idea of health. You're concerned about, well, what is healthy for not only human being, but also this human being, right? For he treats patients individually. So the artist and the physician or that deals with individually. Let us let what pertains to these things be stated up to this point. In other words, he's going to stop here. This is given this question of the good here. Let's given what pertains to the question of the good, before I dose of the good. Well, let it be stated up to this point. Okay, stop. That is, we care not for the general thing. We care more for not even the idea of the concept, but not the concept in us, the human, but this particular human, right? It is even more so that of the particular. He treats the patient. So the question of the physician in that sense. Okay, we'll stop here. This is the first video of chapter 6. We turn next to chapter 7. If you have any questions or comments, please put them below. Any questions or comments about the question of the good here? Again, this is a critique of Plato in that sense. This is a direct critique of Plato. And Plato's in the Republic in that sense too. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please put them below. You wanted some more further information about this chapter, please put it below, and when I see it, I will respond. If you liked it, hit the like button, share it with a friend, share it share it on your social media, share it with around. If you've not subscribed, subscribe. Encourage others to subscribe. Now, if you didn't like it, you can of course say, "Oh, I didn't like it." You can always hit the thumbs down, but say why in the comments so we can learn. People can learn. You have a different take, or think I did something wrong, or you don't like the way I'm doing it. Say so in that sense. You don't like the good in that sense. Okay. If you want to follow, you can follow me on social media. My social media links are listed below. The other thing is that if you want to follow me as a scholar, because I am a scholar in this sense, you can follow my scholarship through the academic social media links below the social media links. And if you want to help me to do what I do with these things, because it would be useful in that sense, you can do so by contributing through Subscribe Patreon. Or there's another way you can do so. You can, if you have not done it already, you can always buy one of my books that are listed below through either Amazon or something. It helps in that sense. Um, Again, I hope you all a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Next time we meet, when we look at chapter 7 of the Ethics.